Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Debt Life with me, Chad Van Horn. Today's topic, shift your mindset. It's time to end your pandemic habits. Before we jump into that, though, I want to give a big shout out to everybody at Van Horn Law Group. They won Law Firm of the Year from Legal Aid this year. They really do a ton of great work for people in need. So shout out to everybody, all the paralegals, admins, attorneys, everybody that helped win this award. So get involved in legal aid. It's really, really important that we work for our foundational citizens and give access to people in need of legal help. So, all right, let's jump into it. So obviously, we've come a long way since when this pandemic first started. Now mask mandates have loosened restrictions, especially if you're vaccinated. Businesses are starting to open up. People are actually starting to return to the office-based environment for the first time in over a year at this point. So I know I have some friends out there that are really dreading having to get dressed up, ditching the sweatpants. I'm not going to call any of you guys out, but you certainly can comment on Facebook if you're one of them. But it's time to get back to the way things were. So what I'm recommending for business owners, look at having a phased-in approach. If you really were shut down for a year, I don't think you could just turn the spigot on 100%, have everybody in the office back 5 days a week. So maybe start with coming in for a day a week, 2 days a week, and then easing people into it, because there is going to be shock. I mean, people are going to be in shock. They're not going to know how to socialize like they used to. So make sure that you're bringing it back in and you're thinking about people as humans, because we're certainly not robots, and it's been a really tough year. Luckily, us at Van Horn Law Group, we've been coming to the office throughout. We switched up some things at the office. We moved people around. We got an extra floor here, but I think that consistency has really helped out. So let's talk about the pandemic mindset. So when you first came into it, and it's a natural thing to think about survival first. It was a really scary year where people were dying, people were getting sick. We weren't really sure of how to deal with this. So when you're concentrated on survival, you let other things go, like dealing with your finances, worrying about your credit, dealing with your mortgage. So there's many lenders that were giving you time, giving you forbearance. So the student loans are still in forbearance. A lot of mortgages are still in forbearance, but now things are coming to an end. So what do? First step is you got to list everything that you're dealing with. So if you have mortgages, if you have credit cards, if you have student loans, you're going to have to make a list of everything that you have to deal with, and then take it one at a time. So let's start with mortgages. So if your mortgage forbearance is coming to an end, there's many different options that you can work out. Obviously, you can bring the loan current. So whatever months you were in forbearance, you can pay those and then continue to pay on your normal monthly mortgage payment. Unfortunately, a lot of people haven't been able to save up money where they can just make up for 6 to 12 months worth of payments. So if you haven't done that, then you got to reach out to your lender and talk to them about potentially modifying the mortgage, meaning putting that arrearage, putting the forbearance amount onto the back end of that mortgage, and then working out a new payment plan, and that potentially could lower your interest rate as well. Your third option would be to look at refinance options. So as mortgage brokers will tell you, these are some of the lowest interest rates ever right now. You're around 3%. So if you have a higher interest rate, it might make sense, and your credit score and other credit worthiness allows you can try to refinance and take advantage of those lower rates, and even potentially lower the length of the loan from a 30-year to a 15-year loan. So the key is to take these seriously, jump on it early, because there's going to be millions of people that are going to go through this process. It's estimated 10 to 15% of homeowners are technically in default or forbearance. So just make sure that you're working with your lender to work through that. So other people had to rely on credit cards to get by. So if you had to rely on your credit card and your credit card balances have gone up, first thing you want to do is contact your credit card lenders to see if they have any offers for you to lower the interest rate. I recommend doing that as a matter of course every year. Try to lower the interest rate. Just give them a call, ask them if there's a lower interest rate available. And also you can ask them if they can expand your balance. So the larger amount or credit limit, I'm sorry. So that'll help rebuild your credit and give you more credit that you can access into a time of need. So that's the first step. If they're not able to work with you and you're not able to make a payment, that's when it's time to come see somebody like me, where we can lay out a different plan for attacking those credit card debts. So basically, the key is always going to be, and I say this basically every Debt Life podcast that we have, always stick to that budget, come up with a budget, revise the budget when different things happen. So if you lose your job, if you lose your income, if you increase your income, you got to really update that budget to make sure that it's reflecting what's going on today. And always bring out the bank statements so you can see, because it's amazing how many people don't know how much they're paying on a monthly basis for simple things like food, gas, different insurances. So you really want to go through that and make sure you have the budget in place, and you want to revisit things like insurance to see if you can lower your insurance, get a more competitive rate. It's easy to set it and forget it. I'm guilty of it too. If it's not broke, don't why fix it? But sometimes you're getting taken advantage of because there are better rates or better services out there for a lower price, and that will directly impact your bottom line of how much money you have left over for savings or for spending it for paying down debt. Which obviously that's the number one thing you can do is get your debt paid off, and it's great living a debt-free life. So something that we've seen recently, there's an increase in creditor activity. As people are going back to work and getting off unemployment, the creditors are extremely aggressive with wage garnishments. So if you have judgments out there, many people think that judgments are only good for the statute of limitations period, which in Florida is 5 years. Judgments are actually good for up to 30 years. So and a statute of limitations defense is only viable if you do it while they're suing you. If the judgment's already entered, you already lost. So you can't bring up the statute of limitations defense at that point. So if you have judgments out there, make sure that you address them because I'm seeing them garnish wages, not only wages, but bank accounts as well. So if you are going to refinance a mortgage or buy a house, the creditors are monitoring your credit report. And if they see that, they're going to try to freeze a bank account because they think that you might have a down payment for that house. And that's the worst thing that can happen if you're really excited about closing on a mortgage and buying a house, and then all of a sudden your mortgage payment's gone because you had a judgment from 10, 15 years ago, whether it be a repossession, deficiency judgment from a foreclosure from the last foreclosure crisis nearly 15 years ago now. Or American Express or a debt buyer sued you and they got a judgment that they just let sit out there and collect interest, and they'll eventually collect from you. So just be very, very careful because creditors are getting more aggressive. During this time with forbearance and eviction forbearance, a lot of creditors' attorneys have not had a ton of work, so they've had to look at different things. And one of the other things that they can do is obviously collect on this unsecured debt. So be very, very careful with that. I'd like to give a success story. We had a client that came in, not only had a garnishment, but also had a sale date on their house. And they came in on a Friday. Sale was actually Monday. We were able, and they had equity in the home, which was the worst part. So if you go through a foreclosure sale, generally speaking, you're not going to get as much equity out of the sale of the property because a foreclosure sale, people pay 20 to 30% less than what you would get on if you hired a realtor and marketed the property for sale. So we're able to stop the sale, stop the garnishment, and put the client on a payment plan with their mortgage holder and save the home. So now they're back in control, where they can either make the monthly payment if they can afford to do that, which it looks like they're going to be able to, or they're going to have months to market the property for sale and get the equity out of the property. So do not let your property go to foreclosure sale. There are ways to avoid that. You just have to act before the foreclosure sale. If you come in on Friday, the sale's on Monday, we're going to stay the weekend and make sure that we save your property. But obviously, the more time that you can give us, the more options that we have. So that was stopped through a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which I've spoken about before, which is the reorganization chapter that allows you to save assets, secured assets, through that process. So as you might know, there has been a moratorium on foreclosures. That's expiring as well. So sale dates are starting to get scheduled. So if you have a sale date on your home, don't wait. Talk to an attorney, get your options, get something figured out. Even if you don't have a ton of equity in it, it might be better to sell the property to avoid a deficiency judgment. A deficiency judgment is when if they sell the property at foreclosure for 200,000 and you owed 250, they can come after you for that other 50,000, get a judgment against you for that. So be very, very careful not to just avoid it. Do the ostrich approach, put your head in the sand and hope everything's going to go away, because once you do rebuild, this judgment can hit you again a decade or two later. So just be very, very careful with that. As I said a little earlier, wage garnishment notices are up huge. So if you get a wage garnishment, come see an attorney immediately, because you have 14 days to file your exemption in the state of Florida. So if you're head of household or if there's other exemptions that you can apply, if you don't file the claim of exemption within that time frame, you actually waive it. And then at that point, the only way to stop the wage garnishment is by agreement or bankruptcy. So get that claim of exemption in as soon as you can if you have the exemption. Let's see here. As I said earlier, judgments are good for 20 years, renewable for 10 more after that. So just be very, very careful. If you get a judgment against you or if you get a lawsuit filed, you really got to figure out something to do with it. The worst thing you can do is just ignore it, let them get a judgment, let it sit out there. I always tell my clients the worst time to fight a lawsuit is after they get the judgment, because your appellate rights really aren't that great normally. So, all right. So now if you did acquire debt during the pandemic, don't worry. A lot of people have, including the United States. We're trillions in debt. So you're certainly not alone. So let's figure out what are the ways that we can address that debt. So if the first step that I always say, you reach out to your creditors and try to negotiate with them directly. So before you default, tell them you're struggling, and let them know what you can afford to pay. Be realistic here as well. The worst thing that you can do is make an agreement, and then a month later you're back and you're working out another agreement. So be very careful with that. If you come to an agreement, make sure that it's doable. If it's not, let them know you can't do it. If you can't come to an agreement and then you need to really renegotiate terms and you stop paying, you actually will get better terms once you default, but it will negatively impact your credit. So you got to be careful. If you're looking to refinance your house, if you're looking to get a debt consolidation loan, make sure you don't negatively impact your credit, or that'll hurt you to qualify for either one of those options. So if you can't pay, stop paying, and then we can renegotiate terms. The creditors in that scenario, generally speaking, want lump sum payments. So if you have access to a lump sum, you're going to get a better deal. If you need a payment plan, they will do payment plans. The longer the payment plan, the worse the deal you're going to get. Generally speaking, we see 40 to 60% discounts that are available after you default for a little while, depending on your situation, depending on your assets and who the creditor is. If none of those work for you, then the next two options that we look at are the bankruptcy options, Chapter 7 versus Chapter 13. Chapter 7, generally speaking, is for people that have unsecured debts that are under the median income. Median income for a single person's just around $52,000, and then it goes up from there. If you have assets that are not exempt, so if you have a paid off car, we have a $1,000 vehicle exemption in Florida, actually working with Congressman Gottlieb to hopefully put a bill forward to increase that, since it hasn't increased in 30 years. And I'm sure 30 years ago, maybe you could buy a car for $1,000, but obviously today you can't. So if you have a car or something that's more than that, then we can look at the Chapter 13 option, where you get to keep all your assets, but you have to repay a portion of the debt back to your creditor. So you're not repaying the 100% normally. We've had plans anywhere from 1% to 100%, but it really depends on your assets, your income and expenses, on how much that you're going to pay back. Chapter 13, again, as discussed a little bit earlier, is ideal for people that are behind on their mortgages, behind on their cars, and want to reorganize their financial life and get into a payment and get caught up on those. It was originally designed to save the home from foreclosure. So if your home's in foreclosure, then the Chapter 13 is going to stop that foreclosure and allow you to get into a payment plan. So now's my favorite time of the podcast. We're going to answer a couple questions. If you guys have any questions, just post them on Facebook. I appreciate everybody joining. The first question I see here is, should I file bankruptcy jointly with my husband? So that really depends on the situation. So if you both have debts and you both want to get cleaned up and clean up those debts, then usually a joint filing makes sense. But you have to take into consideration also the assets. So if only one of you have assets in their name and there's not much debt in that person's name, it might make sense to keep your husband or you out of it and just file by yourself. So you do have that option. If you do file joint, it does save you on the filing fees and costs, because you only have to pay them once. The attorney's fees aren't that much more. So generally speaking, with us, it's only probably an additional $500 to file jointly as it would be individually. So, and as always with our bankruptcies, we work out payment plans. So don't think attorneys are too expensive. You're not going to get hourly rates with us. You're going to get flat fee, and you're going to get 0% payment plans that we can work out. So if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in there. Make sure that we're shifting your mindset to end these pandemic habits. It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. You're used to working from home. You're used to working your sweatpants. Maybe you have a different schedule because you're able to work from home. You're able to fit in workouts, maybe take the kids to school and whatnot. So try to work with your employer to make sure that you're easing back into it, and make sure that it's a smooth transition. We got one more question here before we sign off. Can a judgment put a lien on your home? So in Florida, if they get a judgment and they record a certified copy of that judgment, it is actually a lien on all your property in the county where they record that. So if you have a home in Broward County, they get a judgment in Broward County and they record a certified copy, it is a lien on your home, but it is an ineffective lien if it's your homestead. So if you live there, they really can't do anything with that lien. And even when you sell your property, if you use those proceeds to purchase another homestead, the judgment would not take from there. Now, if it was an investment property, that's different. They can actually foreclose on the house. A judgment can foreclose on the house and or take the equity from that home if it is sold. So just be very careful with judgments. They're really nasty things that stick around for a long time, and they have this knack of coming up at the worst time possible. So thank you everybody we got one more question. How do I know if debt negotiation or bankruptcy makes the most sense? That really comes down to the professional. So you got to meet with a professional, meet with an attorney that handles both. I never like when I always give the example. If you go to a Ford dealership, they're going to try to sell you a Ford. You're not going to know all your options. So it's the same thing with attorneys. You really want to deal with somebody that knows all your options and can guide you in the best option for you. If you go to an attorney that only does Chapter 7s, they're probably going to talk to you about a Chapter 7. If you go to an attorney that only does Chapter 13s, probably going to talk to you about a 13. Same thing with debt negotiation. If you go to a debt negotiation attorney or consolidation attorney, that's what they're going to talk to you about. So when you go to somebody that deals with everything, 7s, 13s, 11s, debt negotiation, you have a better chance of having the best option for you. So when debt negotiation versus bankruptcy, in my opinion, debt negotiation is better when you have fewer creditors and you have an ability to pay those off in a reasonable time. Bankruptcy makes sense when you really can't dedicate enough capital monthly to settling those. So that's the generic response, but really you need to talk to an attorney and get that answer. So as always, we're offering free consultations, weekdays, weekends, evenings, mornings. We actually have 2 attorneys doing it. Shout out to John Voss. He's helping me with consultations because we've been so busy. Have 2 books available. The Debt Life, which is personal experiences of debt on clients that we've had, and Bankruptcy in Florida, which breaks down the bankruptcy process. And we actually have Bankruptcy in Florida coming out in Spanish. So I'm really excited about that because we have many Spanish speakers down here that I know feel more comfortable reading this information in their native language. So thanks again for joining me for this episode. I hope the topics were helpful for you. As always, I wish you the best and check back in a couple weeks for the newest episode of The Debt Life. Thanks, guys.